Hello. I had a student who asked if I would make a quick recording of how to write an easy script. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And I'm sorry for any of you that have to listen to my voice. It's akin to nail scratching on a chalkboard to me, so you have my sympathies for having to hear it. But anyway, to do this script, we're going to use AutoIt for the scripting language, and we're going to go ahead and just write a small, simple script to help us install Firefox in an automated fashion. And there's obviously a lot more things that you could do with it than what we're going to do here, but this is just sort of to get your feet wet kind of a thing and an introduction. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to need to do is, if you haven't already, go ahead and go download AutoIt. One easy way is just to do a search for AutoIt v3, and it's usually about the top result here in Google. So if you'll just notice the address bar, that's where you could go straight to it if you wanted. And go ahead and expand this. Scroll down to where you can find the download section. All right, just grab the latest version and just get this very first icon here that it'll come with the text editor and compiler and all the other bits that you need. Okay. Now we're not going to go through the install of it. There's plenty of documentation out there to help you with that, but I at least wanted to show you where it was. And for those that may be wanting to follow along, you're going to want to go ahead and grab Firefox. You can just go to firefox.com, which will route us to Mozilla's site, but get us there easy enough. Okay, now you'll notice that you could download Firefox right here, but that actually uses a specialized installer that doesn't always work with automating through a script. So what we actually want to do is come down to this option that says Systems and Languages. So go ahead and click on that. Okay. Then when you scroll down, you'll notice you've got all these options, right? So you're going to need to know if your Windows is 32-bit or 64-bit. If your Windows is 32-bit, then use one of the download icons here on the left. If it's 64-bit, then use the ones on the right. Then just find the language that's appropriate for you. I'm going to use English US, even though I probably prefer English British. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and download that. And while this is downloading, the very first thing you're gonna want to do actually is in writing a script. In this case, we're automating something that's a manual process. And the first thing you want to do when you're automating a manual process is to actually run through the manual process itself and to take notes of each of the steps, because that's what you're going to want to automate, right? So in this case, I'm going to pull this installer just onto my desktop here so that we can get to it later. I'm going to make sure that I have Firefox already uninstalled from my computer by opening my control panel. I'm going to go to small icons because that's what I prefer, and then come to Programs and Features. And then I'm just going to look through, oh, there's another version of Firefox, so let's go ahead and uninstall that. And then just pretty much hit next and uninstall and finish. Okay, let's make sure that we don't see anything else. I probably want to get rid of this. Oh, all right, I guess that's already good. All right, so let's go ahead and close this out. Now that we don't have Firefox already installed, let's go ahead and run the installer. Okay, and while we do that, I'm going to actually be taking notes just in a separate window here of the steps that we do. And we've actually already performed a step that I want to make note of, and which is one, obtain the installer, right? And if our purpose is to automate this process for somebody, that that sort of translates into wanting to provide it to the user who's going to run our automated installer, okay? All right, so then for step 2, it's going to be run the installer, right? Okay, that's the very next step that we're going to do. Easy enough. So I'm just going to double click on Firefox setup here. And it might take a second to load up. Okay, do you want to run this? I'm going to go ahead and allow it. And yes. Okay, so we had another step that we already did, right? Like yes to UAC. Now I'm going to add a little note here because I already know that we need to do this. Because basically what he was asking us when we got that screen that grayed everything out and we had to see yes to it, is we're allowing this program to have administrative access to our computer so that it can install. All right, so I made that note. Okay, so the next thing, we want to make sure that our Mozilla Firefox window is active. All right, and we'll talk about how to do that a little later. All right, so let's start on our first step. Our first step is to click Next. Okay. So make note of that. Okay, so I'm going to click Next. I'm going to go ahead and just do the standard one. So I'm going to click Next a second time. So I'm going to make note of that. Okay, I'm good with the default options here, so I'm just going to click Install. Okay. And it already ran, so my next option here is to just click Finish. All right, and so we've got Firefox already installed here, okay? I'm going to go ahead and close it out. And then you're going to end up repeating this but over and over as you test your stuff. But open up your control panel again, go back to your programs and features, find Firefox, uninstall it. Install that Mozilla maintenance thing. Okay, go ahead and close that out. All right. So here's, I'm going to pull into view the steps that I have written so far, right? So this is obtain the installer or in some way provide it to the user, okay? Then we want to actually run the installer or run the executable, right? Okay. We want to run this as admin privileges, okay? We want to make sure that the window's active. Then really all we did after that was we clicked next, then install, then finished. And that was it, right? Pretty simple. So we've really got about 8 steps here. Let's go ahead and see how we can start coding that out. Okay, and we're going to just start this out as simple as we can. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is go into your All Programs. You should have this AutoIt V3 folder. Okay. And then the Siteee script editor, open that up. All right, so this just brings up, for lack of a better word, it's really just sort of a more advanced Notepad. You could write this program in Notepad if you wanted, but you'll notice as we go along that this Siteee editor will give us a few benefits, like giving us some syntax coloring. It'll help color code the different parts of the code to make it easier to read, and it'll provide us hints along the way even. All right, so let's go ahead and Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take those steps that we had in our notes, and I'm going to actually copy those, and then I'm just going to paste them right in. And while I do that, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of add this semicolon in the front here. That just tells the computer to ignore these lines. It's doing what's called commenting. And that way we can keep these steps in our mind as we start to work on our script. We don't have to keep looking away or anything. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just save this right off the bat on my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder actually called Firefox Install Script. Okay, and then I'm just going to name that script Firefox Inst, and it would have added this AU3 but .AU3 for AutoIt 3. Okay, so now we've got that saved. And actually, since I made that folder, I might as well keep things nice and organized. And I'm going to put this Firefox installer program right into that folder. So you'll notice if I open that up, we've got that script that we just saved, and now the Firefox exe. And I'm actually going to go ahead and take the spaces out of this file name just to it seems to make things easier for me, and I'm old school, you know, I come from the old file names need to only be 8 characters long with a 3-character extension and no spaces and everything. So I guess it's still a leftover, but I prefer it without spaces. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. So the very first thing we need to do, so let's go ahead and break these out. Okay, so we need to provide the installer to the user. Now, preferably if you're going to automate this, you're going to give them your script as one single file, and then they don't need to go out and get the Firefox installer themselves or anything, right? That would just make it back to being manual process. So let's go ahead and there's this command called file install. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and use that. And you'll notice that as I start to type this out, that it's actually giving us hints here. It's telling us how this is structured. So just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to actually follow their structure here so that if it disappears, I can still have it to go off of. And I'm just abbreviating source with src and dest with dst just to keep it simple in my head. Okay. All right. So you notice it's kind of disappeared, but we still know where to put things. So let's go ahead and look at this. Let's say that I don't really know what this does, and then I need help with it maybe. Let's see how you can do that. If you go up here to this help, and you just say help, or you could have hit the F1 key, it'll bring up this guide for you that has commands that the system has, and it has how to use them and that. So let's go ahead and just file install. There it is. And there it is. It's pulled it up for us. You'll notice that it's got that same text that it had for the hint earlier right up top here, showing us how we need to use this. And it's got an explanation for what source and dest and flag is. Okay. So the source, that's the source path of the file to compile. So this is basically, we're telling the computer where is the Firefox installer already on my computer. Okay. And then the destination to put the file, okay. You'll notice that it's saying that this can be a variable. It's because the source can't be. All right. So but basically this is where you want to put that same installer, that Firefox.44.exe or whatever, on the other person's computer when they run your script. All right. And then you've got this flag option. So you'll notice these options up here that have the square brackets. These square brackets tell you that those are optional, that you don't actually have to provide those. Everything else is required. But let's go ahead and see what happens if we do provide this. determines whether to overwrite the file if it already exists or not. Okay, so a 0 would mean to not overwrite the file, and a 1 would mean to overwrite the file. Okay? All right. And then it tells us that, you know, return and some other notes. We can talk a little bit more about those later maybe. But down below you'll notice it even gives us an example here of how we can use this command. Right? Okay. Just right here they've got example code for us so that we can see how other people are using it. Okay, well I'm going to go ahead and close this out for now, or actually I'll just minimize it so we can pull it back up. Okay, so source. Well, I happen to know that my installer, my Firefox setup 4402.exe, is in the same directory, the same place as my script that I'm writing. So I can just copy this and drop it in right here. Okay. All right. Easy enough. Okay. Now I want to sidetrack real quick and show you a quick tip that you can do. You might notice on your computer that you may not see this .exe, right? It might just say Firefox setup and then the version number. Now you can fix that so that you can see the file extensions simply by going to Organize and Folder and Search Options. And if you click on this View tab, and you'll notice you've got a few different options here, okay? But specifically in this case, we are looking for this one that says hide extensions for known file types. You want to make sure that that is unchecked, that that the box is clear. That way you can see the full file name without it trying to hide that last bit from you. All right. And if you wanted to change it back later on, you just do the same thing. Go back in, View, hide extensions for known file types, and you'd apply it back in. All right. Okay. That's right now. So for dest, well, where do we want the destination to be? Well, how about we just do, it said we could make a variable for this one. So let's go ahead and make a variable for it because we might want to use it later on. So the way we do that is we just give our variable a name, and all variables in this language begin with a $sign. Okay. So I've just named mine ffInstDest to remind me that it's for Firefox installer destination, and then give it an equal sign. And you don't necessarily have to do these parentheses, but it's just habit for me, so I go ahead and do it. And let's go ahead and say that we want it to be, you know, I want it to be on the temp folder of whatever user is running this. But that's not always in the same place for everyone, depending on how their Windows is installed, or, you know, temp folders can be specific to user, that kind of thing. So I'm going to try and use AutoIt actually has some built-in variables where it can find those things out when your program is running, when your script is running. And you can look at that if you just type the @ sign, your Shift F or Shift 2. You'll notice that it'll actually bring up a list for us of all these different options that it already has built in. Okay. Now I know I want the temp directory, so I'm going to assume that I know that it starts with temp. Oh, and there it is, so temp dir. Okay. All right. And then I do this ampersand, you know, which is the Shift 7 key. And, you know, I'm going to go ahead and call this the same thing here. Alright. I don't actually remember if it needs the slash or not, but I'm going to put it there and then we'll take it out later if we need to. Okay, so now that we've got this variable, we can just copy it and we can use it right here like it told us we could. Now you notice I've got this (1). I'm telling the computer that I want it to overwrite that file if it already exists. Okay. Now we've actually got enough to start testing something out real quick. So let's actually see if it will let us do this. Okay. So after we've installed our dest, we want to run it, right? Okay, so I'm going to save it. I'm just hitting Control S, or you could also hit the save disk, or you could go to File and Save. Okay, either option would work. Now I want to actually run what we've got so far. We don't have a lot, but we've got enough to see if what we're doing works. So let's go ahead and go up to Tools. And then you can, if you see this option that says Go, I'm going to click on that just to test it. Okay. All right, so it's asking us, Firefox wants permission to run, yes. All right, so it's actually launching here. Okay. Now I'm going to cancel out because we don't actually want to do it yet. But let's try something out real quick. I want to see where my temp drawer is. Okay. And it told me that I could hit F5 to run the script, so I'm going to go ahead and just hit F5. Okay, so we still got that. Got that. I can go ahead and just get rid of this. Okay. All right. So if I want to see where that temp directory is, we can actually check that out if we open a command prompt. So click on your Start menu, which is for most people probably at the bottom here. I just prefer it up top. And you can type CMD. Okay. And you'll notice that this just brings us to a prompt like this. Okay. And then there is an option here to see a lot of the system built-in variables. If we just type the word set, S-E-T, and then hit enter, you notice that it brings up all these different options here. Okay. But we're interested in knowing what my temporary directory is, or my temp dir. So if we come down, we'll notice that we've got this temp. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to that folder. I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to open me up another window. Just paste that in. Okay. So we can see that it's on my C drive users, my username, after local temp. And then if I scroll down, I can probably find my Firefox setup right there. That's the one that we put in, right? So I'm going to close this out. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute here. I need to go do something real quick. But we'll be right back. Go ahead and take a look at this and then try it out on your own. All right, so let's get back to going. So when we left off for a second ago, we had gotten to the point where we could run the Firefox installer, but now we need to actually deal with our next step. Okay, now we've actually got this step as yes to UAC Require admin. What I'd like to do is I'd like to ask the user about the, or not ask them, but I'd like to present them with this when they very first run our script, instead of when Firefox needs it. that way right off the bat. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to put at the top of our script here, require admin. Okay. Now what that's going to do is as soon as they go to run your script, it's going to ask for that UAC authentication. And since your script is then authenticated as having admin rights, when it runs the Firefox one, it will too, so it won't ask again. But I like to get it over with right at the beginning if I can. So we're going to tick that one off as done, basically. Okay, we want to make sure that the Firefox window is active. Okay, so let's see, how would we do that? You know what, when they run this, I'm going to go ahead and let's say that we want to sleep, which is kind of like pausing our script for a few seconds. All right, but we can say how long. So let's go ahead and use the method we learned for help real quick. Okay, let's open up our help thing in here and let's say sleep. Okay, I'm just really trying to get you used to being able to do this. Sleep, and then inside we need to put how long we want the delay. So, but we need to put it in milliseconds. Notice that. So let's go down and look at our example. So look, if you want 5 seconds, you've got to do 5,000. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and give 5 seconds a try real quick here. All right. And then I'm going to use this command winActivate. Okay. And then I'm going to close this. And what this is going to do is it will activate a window based on the title of that window. But we need to know the title of our Firefox installer, right? So let's see if we can find a way to figure that out. Essentially what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and run our setup program. Just say run. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here in the install process because this is the window we want to know what it's named. Now there's actually an AutoIt tool that's out there that can help us do things like that. So if we go to this AutoIt V3, you notice you've got this AutoIt window info. You've got these two options. I'm on a 64-bit machine and I'm going to do stuff through 64-bit, so I'm going to go ahead and just do the x64 one. Okay. All right. Now what this will let us do is, so if you grab this little target here and you just drag it onto this window here, you'll notice that the information here has changed, right? And we have the title of the window. So I'm just going to copy that. Okay. Just going to say copy. All right, I'm going to minimize that in case we want it for later. Cancel out of this. Let's jump back into our script. So winActivate. Move the setup, okay. And then when I want to wait till that's active, right? Now you'll notice we've now had to use this window name twice. And as a good rule of thumb, if you're going to use a piece of information more than once, you may as well put it in a variable, okay? So I'm going to just make us a new variable, do our $sign. I'm going to call it FF setup win, okay, equals. I'm going to do my parentheses again, do quotations to let the computer know that this is going to be text and that it should pay attention to the text between the parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to copy that variable name and I'm going to put it in place of these two spots. All right. Okay. Also, that means if we needed to adjust this script later on, maybe Firefox updates and we want to update our script for the new version, and and they change their window name, then we could just change it in this one place and it will change it anywhere in the script that we've used it. That's really kind of the benefit of using a variable. All right, so we're going to wait till it's active. And then what are our next steps? We want to do next, install, and finish. Okay, so let's go ahead and think how we might do that. Now you could actually in this language program out the mouse to click on a particular button and to seek that button out. And that's totally a great way to do things. But for the sake of this script today, we're trying to keep it simple. So what's another way that we could do this? I'm going to just come back to our setup window again. I know I keep doing this. Okay, yes. All right. So if I'm at this window, what are the ways I have to click next? Obviously, I can use my mouse, and I can hit next, okay, with my mouse, and that would certainly work. But another way we can do it, if you notice, if I just hit enter, it's doing the same thing, right? Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and cancel at this point. But the enter key seems to be selecting the default options, and we pretty much only used the default options. So just for the sake of trying this out, I'm just going to send an enter key for each one of these. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4 times. Okay. So let's see how I might send the enter key. I'm going to go into help, and I'm going to just type send. Okay, well, let's try the send key list. All right, send, and it's got all of these options for us. We can just scroll down. All right, how would we do this? Send, okay, up, left, right, down. So if I'm going to send the enter, then I would just do like this, but with enter it looks like. So I'm going to copy that. Let's give this a try and see how this works for us. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of enter. Okay, and we've got 4 because we've got next, install, and finish. Now I'm going to go ahead and just, for the sake of next number 1, next number 2. Actually, let's go ahead and get rid of those notes. We've already got identifiers. We've got our step numbers to the left. So I'm going to add a comment after this and just say step 5. Okay. That way I remember which enter this is supposed to be. Step 6, step 7, and step 8. Okay, so that gives us our 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Now I think when we went through that install before, I noticed that the screens weren't instant, and a computer can hit an enter key really pretty fast. It can hit 4 enter keys faster than I can probably hit enter once. So we probably want a little bit of a break in between each one of these. I'm going to go ahead and borrow from our sleep command because we've already seen that can pause for us. And I'm just going to enter these in. Okay. But I'm going to not do this for quite as long. I'm going to try it out with, let's say, 1 second each. Okay. All right. Now, let's just give that a try. I'm just going to save it with the Control S on my keyboard. Again, you could use the save disk if you wanted. I'm going to go ahead and go Tools, Run. Okay, it asked us for the UAC right up front. That's what we're looking for that. Good. Oh, it hit that last enter happened way too soon. So let's let's think of how we might be able to not send it. And different computers might run at a different speed for that last enter. So we need to think of a way to do that. Now, let's go back to our frozen or our window inspector thing here, and let's actually drag this on here. So we've got a window name with Windows setup. Let's see, we've got this. We've got visible text. All right, you know what? We've got this this line of text here. Maybe if we borrow that. Okay. Finish. Okay. All right, now I haven't actually shown you what you're going to do with this text yet, but so I'm going to just drop it in a comment there just to get it out of the way. Remember we used this WinWay active before? Well, you can do it with the window title, but you can also include some text that window should include in it. And so maybe in this case, what we want to do is not only when that window is active, but when that window contains some specific text. In this case, we're completing them as a, right? Okay. So let's give this a try. But we've already installed Firefox, so we're going to need to uninstall it again real quick here. Control panel, open, go back to our programs and features. Okay, Mozilla, uninstall, yes, uninstall, okay, uninstall, install, okay. So we've got that all uninstalled. So let's go ahead and hit F5 to run our program. Say yes. Okay. And look at that. It waited and it sent the enter after things were done. And there you have it. You have a really quick script to install Firefox. It's not a very elegant script, right? It doesn't really tell the user anything and things are going on, and it's not broken out into functions, but so far it works. So let's see how we can go ahead and make this script a little bit better and clean it up. Okay, so let's break our script up into some steps. Okay, we're going to introduce a concept that we talked about in class a little bit, but let's talk about it again here for a second, called functions. Okay. And I'm just going to type some pieces out here real quick, and then we'll explain them a little better. Okay, okay. So this is a function. Just like you probably had in math class, you had functions, right? Or simply put, it's kind of like when you do specific things within a program. For example, when I hit the save disk, there's probably a function in this program that tells it how to save my file out somewhere and runs that function. So we want to break our script out into the different pieces, the different functions that it's actually performing. And so let's think of how we can break this out. Now maybe we can do one called setup, right? Or actually, I'm going to call it initialize. Okay. I should have done the func in front of it. Give it some func. Okay. Okay. Now this last part, you'll notice it's after a comment, after our semicolon, so it doesn't actually do anything. I just like to help me organize stuff so that because here we're saying that we're creating a function and we're giving that function a name, and then this is where we're saying that this is the end of the function. Sometimes when you get a lot of code, and some of these functions can grow really, fairly long and stuff, it just makes life a little bit easier to keep everything noted and commented. I mean, to notate where everything is. Okay, so initialize that's going to be our first step stuff. Okay, and so what would we do in our very first? What do we do when we're initializing? Well, that would probably be a good place to put maybe where we're setting our variables and where we do that file install. Okay. And then I'm just going to tab these in just to help keep it a little more readable. All right. Okay. And then, maybe so once we've initialized, we haven't actually asked the user if they want to install this. That's probably a good thing to do. So I'm going to add that as my second step. Okay. All right. Now we don't actually have anything there yet because we haven't done that yet. So I'm going to leave that blank for a minute. But we'll go ahead and leave it there. Then our next step would be to actually do the install, right? Okay. So there's do install. Actually, I'm just going to add this comment semicolon after each one of these because it won't hurt anything, but it's a good habit to get into. There's a lot of other languages like SQL, some JavaScript, some other like C# and other things that at the end of each command want to have a semicolon. So it's not a bad habit to get into. All right. Okay. So as usual, we're going to our do install, so let's make a function for that. And also note that these names are case sensitive. So if I change that from lowercase I to an uppercase I, it is now different than this one. And so that won't work. You need them both to be the same. Okay, and you'll notice I'm using sort of what's called camelcase, basically an uppercase at the beginning of each word so that they can help it be a little more readable for you. All right, so let's see, we've asked the user do install. What steps do we have here that we would consider doing the install? Well, running our install script program, wait until it's active, and actually sending all these keys, right? Pretty much everything we've got left. Okay. All right. Now, like I've done before, I'm just going to tab it in a little bit just to keep it a little cleaner and easier to read, right? Okay. So now, we've essentially broken our script out into functions. And that's a good habit to get into for a lot of languages. Okay, so let's look at how this script runs. So when the computer is, when you run this program or script of yours, it's going to do just like you do when you're reading a page of instructions in a manual or something. It's going to start up at the top and read line 1, then line 2, then line 3, and so on. And so you'll notice line 1, the very first thing it's going to do, it's going to ask to require the admin rights, right? That's where it asks us for the UAC access, okay? Line 2 is blank. Line 3, oh, that's just a comment, 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 just a comment. Ignore them all. Come down. Oh, you've told us to run the main function. And we know that this is a function just by how it's formed with the name and then the 2 parentheses after. So this is the first thing after require admin that you've asked it to do. So the computer is going to actually jump down to your main function and do everything from there. Okay. So, but in that main function, you'll notice we've got initialize as our first step. So what's going to happen here is your computer is going to look at this and it's going to jump down to your initialize function, and then it's going to run through each step of this. Okay. Now when it gets to the end of that function, it's going to come right back where it left off and then start the next line, ask user, and do the steps in there. We don't have anything yet, but we'll get there. And then when it finishes there, it'll come to do install and jump down to do install and then read that line 1, 2, 3, 3, okay, each one of those lines till it gets to the end. Then it will jump back up to the top here and, oh, we don't have anything left, so jump to the end function. And all these other things are buried in a function, so it will ignore those unless you call on them like we did up above with these kinds of things. Okay, so basically that means there's nothing else left to do. All right, now I think we should probably add another function in here for cleanup, or let's maybe make cleanup. Yeah, we'll leave it at cleanup. Then I'll just add a little comment here for goodbye and thanks. All right, just as a reminder that we probably want to let the user know thanks for using this, what have you. Okay, so now before I forget, let's go ahead and make our cleanup function. Func cleanup, and end func and cleanup. Okay. So now let's look at our script. Okay, so let's run through like the computer would. Okay, ask for admin access, come down, jump to main, jump to main. Now here's the cool thing. Since we call on this here, we could move this anywhere we wanted and it would still work, because it will find it by the name that we've given it here. Okay. Now I'm going to put it back up top just because it really makes sense to have this one up top, since it's sort of our table of contents and to-do list, right? Okay, but let's look at initialize. So initialize, we're going to set some variables. Now, there's something I've done here that's actually going to be a problem for us later on. I've made these variables, but now they're inside of a function. And that means that the computer's only going to know what to do with them inside of this function. Now that's good and a bad thing, right? Because it means when this function is over, any variables that it's used in here, it gets rid of it. It clears out the memory so that you're not just constantly adding stuff to the memory of your computer. But in this case, we use these variables all throughout the script. There's a couple ways we could deal with this. We could move them out of any of the functions and just put them up top. But I don't like to do that. I like to leave pretty much everything in functions when I'm doing my scripting. Keeps things a little cleaner and organized. The only thing that I typically like to be out is this main. Okay, but we can make these variables available throughout our program by making, right now they're considered private variables because they are private within the function that they're created in. But if we want them to be available to everyone, if we want to make them kind of public, we do just that. We tell the computer we want these to be public. We want anyone to be able to access them. So let's, if we just add the word public in front there, okay. Now, if we wanted to make, oh, that one's not a variable. What am I doing? Crazy. Okay. Now if we wanted to see if I was doing this right or not, let's go ahead and check our help. Just to double check. I like to get you in the habit of checking this. It's really kind of your lifeline. And when you use programming in other languages, the documentation there will also be pretty much your lifeline for being able to do things. So let's look up variables. Okay. Language reference, variables. Okay, local, global. Now I used the wrong word. See, it should be global in this case instead of public. In other languages, it is actually public, but okay. All right, it's going to tell us how we can do arrays and do all these other things. But for now, we're just interested, okay? And my clue there should have been that these didn't color properly. You'll notice when I do it right, how they colored blue. Okay, so now they're global variables. They're globally available throughout our script. Okay, that's good. I'm glad we checked that. All right. Okay, I'm gonna save. All right. So how are we going to ask the user? Okay, so we need to ask the user if they want to do the install or not. Now, we're going to use what's called a message box to do that, okay? And this is another perfect example of when it's good to pull up the help, because there are a lot of different kinds of message boxes. Message box, okay? So here we are, and you'll notice it's got that help info for us. So, okay, flag. The flag indicates the type of message box. So let's see what we've got for flag options. Let's see. All right, our flag parameter can be any of the following. Okay, decimal. Okay. Now, so we want a yes/no box. That's number 4. But you know, let's go ahead and type it this way. We'll go ahead and type it with 4 real quick. Let's try this. Message box 4, comma. That's the title that we want to give it, and then the message you want to give them. Okay. And I'm going to leave it there for a second. Now this would work just fine, but here's the problem. You're not likely to remember what a 4 is, and neither are other people who use or come back to maintain your script or something. And so this works logically, but wouldn't it be easier if we could just have something a little more visual to tell us what kind of message box we were wanting? Now fortunately, they have actually provided us with a way to do that. You'll notice on this constant name that we've got these names here with these variables. They're just like the variables we had before. They've got a $sign, right? Okay. So really all this $sign means is that it equals 4. But as silly as that might seem, it makes it easier for us to be able to use it. Okay. But the computer doesn't just know what this is. We haven't declared it. We haven't, up top here we declared these variables by giving it a name and a value. But we haven't done that yet for this. Now we could create a variable and give it the number 4, and that would work just fine. But if we go into the help here, you'll find in their example, they've got this include option. And what this is if we copy this and put this in to our script, I'm just going to put it right up top here where we have our require admin, right below it. Okay. This tells the computer that that there is some other code we want to include with our script. Okay. And basically, the people that have made AutoIt have already made a document out there that has like all these variable names and what they equal, that we can just include this in, and then we can drop that in, and we don't, this MB yes no, and we don't have to set it up and maintain them ourselves. And that way they can be standard across different programs, and you can get used to doing that. Okay. So basically all we're saying in this step is to include this message box constants program that somebody else has already written, and it's built into AutoIt essentially. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that because that'll be easier for us to remember that this message box now is a yes/no message box. All right, now, but we want to know what that user actually selects, right? We've given them a yes/no box, but we haven't determined a way to actually capture what they answered. So let's go back to our help here. Okay, and then let's go ahead and scroll. You'll notice when these buttons are pressed that we've got the same kind of thing that we did below, right? They're giving us variable names and then what their value is. So if they click yes, it's going to send a 6. If they click no, it's going to send a 7. Or if the box times out, it's going to be a -1. Okay, so let's go ahead and think about this for a second. So we want to capture that. So it sounds to me like we need another variable. So let's go ahead and we'll, I like to actually keep my variables in one place. And let's go ahead and just create that. Okay. I'm going to shorten that up to just user want, or I'm just going to shorten that to want inst. Okay. Now, I'm going to just set this to a value that I know it will never be. Okay, -9,999. Now I'm doing that so that later on if I need to troubleshoot, because I know that there's nothing in the script that will set this variable to ever equal that again. So that way when I'm troubleshooting things later on, if things aren't seem to work, I can try to figure out if the variable's not getting set or something. And chances are, if that happens, that it means that I didn't capitalize, or I capitalized something that I shouldn't have in the variable name or something. Okay, so let's go ahead but now we want to set that variable to be equal to whatever our user responds. Now let's think about this for a second. So in this command, we've told the computer, give them a message box where they can click yes or no. Okay. Now I'm going to make this message a little bit better. Okay. Okay. Do you want, so what's going to happen is the computer is going to pop up a message box that asks them, are you sure you want to install Firefox? If they click yes, it's going to make this want inst equal to yes is 6. Okay, and if they click no, then it's going to make this want inst equal no, because that's what the user clicked back. Okay. All right, so now we've asked the user, let's find a way to figure out what we can do with their answer. And we're going to do that by doing this if want inst equals, and and I could go and use those numbers, right? I could do a 6 or a 7 to check on those. but I don't want to. I want to use the names so that it's easy for somebody to read. So we've got this ID yes and ID no. So if want inst equals ID no, I'm going to do no for now. Then do something, right? Else if yes, then do something else. We had another option for if the box times out, right? So I want to capture that. Okay. Then do something else. And then we need to do this end if. Okay. All right. So if the user wants to install, if they've clicked the no button, then you know what? We just want to jump straight to our cleanup, right? Because we're leaving. Okay. All right. If they said yes, what do we want to do? We want to do the install. Okay. And if it's timed out, what do we want to do? Now that's something we're thinking about. In this case, I think we want to do the install because they are in likelihood running our script because they want it to be an automated process. And you know, if you gave it to them as an automated script, they may have just run the script and then decided that to walk away so that the script could install Firefox for them. Well, they went and got a drink or something. Okay. So we're going to assume that if the message box times out, that it's because they didn't answer, and that means they wanted it to. Now, you could have reasoning for it to do whatever. Maybe you just want it to go back and ask them again or something. And you could do something like that if you wanted. Okay. Now, let's go back and let's think about how our script is going to run from the top here. Okay. All right, we're going to require the admin access. We're going to include that extra code with the variable names and stuff. Come down, let's run our main function, which is just right here. We initialize function, so let's jump down to initialize. Okay, we set that variable, we set that global variable, we set that global variable. We install the thing, we finish, then we jump back up to ask user. Ask user, we'll assume they said yes. Do install. Okay, so from here we're going to jump down to do install and do install. We're going to step, go through. Okay, we finished the do install. Now remember, when we call a function, we always go back to where we left off. So in this case, our do install was called right here, right? It was called from within the ask user, okay? So, but there's no other steps in this ask user. So we're going to go ahead and jump back up to where ask user ended, and then we're going to do install. Oh wait, that means we would do the install twice, wouldn't we? Yeah, we don't want that. That would just be duplicating it. Okay. All right. So we're going to ask the user. All right, let's think about this. Ask the user. Okay, do install. We're going to jump down, do our do install, and then we're going to jump back up where we left off. Okay, there's nothing left, so we're going to jump to the end of ask user. Then after, so when we're actually done with ask user is when we're done with the do install. So we're going to jump to clean up, and then that's where we're over. Okay, but we don't have anything in cleanup yet. So what would we want to do in cleanup? Well, one thing we want to do, we want to get rid of that file that we put on the computer, right? I'm going to type this right. File, delete. Okay, now what file do we want to delete? We want this file dest, right? Because that's the one that right here we just dropped into their temporary folder, and then we ran it and stuff. So I'm going to copy that and file delete that variable. Okay, and then you know, maybe we want to let the user know that the script is done. Oh, I forgot to do a type, right? I'm just going to use 0 because I know that that's just sort of a generic one. Done. And okay, it's kind of cold and not very nice, but we'll go ahead and go with that for now. Okay, so I'm going to save it. And then let's go ahead and run this. Go up to our tools and go. All right, we're being asked, yes. Are you sure you want to install Firefox? I'm going to say no real quick. Notice how when we said no, we had told it in script to just jump straight to cleanup, right? Install script is done. Okay. And we're done. I mean, it did just that. It didn't install it. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and run our script. Yes. Let's say we want to say yes. Look at that. And look at that. We have a script that automatically installs Firefox. It gave the user an option to say yes or no. Okay. Cool. Awesome. I like it. But there's something that's just off to me. Let me think. In this message box, we never actually told the computer to time this out. So let's go ahead and go back to our message box and see how we do that. Okay, we're still in our message box. Timeout, timeout, timeout in seconds. Default is 0, which is no timeout. Okay, so I'm actually default after 5 seconds. And we assume that if it times out that they say yes, right? Okay, all right. Now, there's also something I don't really like here. When we do this cleanup step, we don't really tell the user, you know, if it was succeeded or canceled or whatever. I would like to be able to switch this up. And there's got to be a way to do that. So let's look at our functions options, okay? Function. Alright, that's just going to give us those notes. So maybe I should have just gone with func. Okay, there we are. Alright, function, function name. Okay. Got all these different notes. I'm just going to look down for an example. Alright. You know, I'm just going to copy what they've got going on here because I'm lazy. Okay. Now, what this means is that we can send cleanup, our function cleanup, a variable. We can send something. So we can say if it succeeded or not. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and say that we make that a 1. And if we reach cleanup normally, we send a 0. Okay. So let's come back to our friend of if, and we want to use this variable. Okay. 0, then why am I retyping this? Let's just use the one we've got. Copy it. Okay. Okay. Else if this variable, I'm just going to do an else. Okay. So see what we did there? We said that if we send a code of 0, then we know that we're saying that it succeeded. Otherwise, the user canceled it or we had an error or something. Okay. So you'll notice when we send our cleanup here, we send a 0. Okay. But when the user canceled here, we send to 1. All right, now let's see if this actually works. It'd be easy to test. Tool, go. Yes. Do we want to install? No. Oh, look, see, we got our new error message. Good enough. All right, Firefox is installed successfully. Have a nice day, and the username. Okay. All right. So there we are. And I think that's close to summing it up. I think we'll do one last little bit. We're going to, during the initialize process, maybe do a splash screen of sorts. I'm going to pause this for a second and bring a little image. Okay, so what I've done is I've just brought in an image file that I can use, and we're going to make what's called a splash screen. You know, when you start up like Microsoft Word or another program, how you get a little screen that says, hey, welcome, kind of thing. Okay, so we're going to make a quick one of those. I'm going to put it in my initialize part of the code here. And so the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to install that file. Okay, so I'm going to just copy this line just to reuse kind of what we've got. But it certainly doesn't have the same name there. So let's go ahead and grab that file name that we had. I called it whome.jpg. Okay, so I'm going to copy that and we're going to paste that in. Okay, and we certainly don't want to install it into the same place, right? So I'm going to do like I did for the Firefox one. I'm going to do global, and I'm just going to call this one splash image equals who me, but I'm going to do the same thing that I did up here, and we may as well just put it in their temp directory, right? Okay. I'm going to make this a little more descriptive. Okay. All right. So we're doing the same thing that we did with our Firefox one. We're just going to install that image onto their computer. All right. And then, but since we're installing it, we're going to want to do the same thing that we did for our Firefox one. And let's do it right now before we forget. And do File, Delete, and that splash image. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to go back up. And let's, I think it's called Splash Image On. All right. All right, now it says that that's all I have to give. So I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to say welcome. All right, and let's see if that works for us. Let's give that a go. Tools, go. Yes. Ah, and look at that. We've got a little, says welcome, and no, Firefox install. Now there's a problem here though. This is just staying up. It's not doing anything, right? Okay. Now we've kind of got ourselves locked into a conundrum here. And I actually did this so that we could see an example. You'll notice on your start menu bar in the task tray that you've got this little AutoIt icon, okay? That's telling you that your script is running. You notice if you hover your mouse over it that it's actually telling you the FF-inst AU3. Okay, you can right click on that and you can force your script to exit, or you can pause it. All right. And all right, let's do that. What I forgot to do was splash image off. Okay, but we don't want it to immediately turn off, so let's go ahead and sleep. Maybe we want them to see it for 4 seconds. Okay. Well, let's say go. Yes. All right, let's go ahead and kill our processes if we have to. I'm going to kill these 2 AutoIt ones. Okay. Okay, so there we go. Now we've shown you how to break out. Okay, we're going to cancel this. All right. So now let's try this again. Let's run our script. Say yes. There we go. It disappeared after a few seconds. Now let's see if our timeout works. Oh, it did. Sorry, I had to get a drink there real quick. Okay, and it worked, right? We got that all done. And we let them know. Thank you. All right, so I think we're going to call this script about done. There's definitely more we could do with it and things, but we've got a pretty good script here. You know, and you've got it broken into functions nicely, and you've got code indented, and you've got variables and a whole bunch of other things going on. So there's one last thing we need to do, right? We need to build it. We want to make it into an executable, into a program. So let's go ahead and just do this build option. Okay. What that's going to do is it's going to take all your code here and package it into a program that you can give to somebody. I'm going to minimize this and see how we've got this ffinst.exe. That is your new program, and notice that it's fairly large, right? It's 44 megabytes. That's certainly more than your text that you typed. It packaged in these other files with it, so you don't have to copy all these files to somebody to have them install Firefox. You can just copy them your ffinst and they can run it. Okay. It will work. Now, if you were going to use this script for real, you might want to have an option that if Firefox is already installed, to tell the user that it's already installed and that it doesn't need to, or to offer to uninstall it or do something. But anyway, there you go. You've got a working Firefox and auto installer, and you can follow the same process to automatically install any number of other programs on Windows. So I hope this has been informative and that it's worked well for you. If you've got any questions or whatever, let me know. Thanks for sticking through it, and all the best to you, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.